After spending 43 years constructing bridges and buildings, one realizes a truth seldom comprehended by many. Every structure, however robust it seems, has a vulnerability. There exists a specific point where applying just the right amount of pressure at the correct angle can cause its collapse. I am Alistair Vane, aged 68, who 6 months ago was grappling with stage 3 lymphoma. The physicians delivered their verdict in that clinical room with an impassive professionalism they seem to learn in medical school. They labeled it treatable, survivable with rigorous chemotherapy. Yet, the unspoken specter, the word nobody dared to utter aloud, was perhaps I would live to see another Christmas. Perhaps I would have sufficient time to organize my affairs. Marcella, my wife, sat beside me in that sanitized consultation room, her hand tightly clinging to mine, tears streaming down her cheeks. She was 20 years younger than me, a previous oncology nurse who tended to me during a minor heart incident 8 years prior. Our bond formed quickly and deeply, or so I assumed. She promised we'd face this battle together. She vowed to stand by me through each treatment, every setback, every minor triumph. I trusted her. I believed every word, and that was my initial error. The revelation took place on a Tuesday, an ordinary day for a life to crumble. Marcella went to what she referred to as her weekly yoga class, a practice she had adopted diligently over the past 2 years. She never missed a session, not even during my most challenging treatment days. I was in my study, searching for a specific medical journal article about lymphoma treatment methods. Marcella had transformed part of our library into a small medical reference section from her nursing days, which she claimed helped her comprehend my health situation better. I picked up a bulky oncological nursing textbook, hoping it held pertinent data. However, the book felt unusually light given its size, and upon opening it, I realized why. Someone had meticulously hollowed out a large rectangular space in the center using a razor blade. Inside this void was a tiny brass key, resembling a safe deposit box key. Standing there for an extended period, I clutched that key, feeling its substantial weight. After 43 years in engineering, I had developed a strong sense of trust in my instincts regarding structural irregularities. An object deviating from the norm is always noteworthy. Marcella and I shared everything, from our joint bank accounts to our joint investment portfolios, even our will leaving everything to the surviving spouse. We had no secrets, or so I thought. My wife possessed a concealed safe deposit box key hidden inside a hollowed-out book. I could have questioned her about it, but I, as a trusting husband, chose not to. However, I was learning that trust might be my most significant weakness. I took the key and photographed the textbook in its original state, then commenced my investigation. It took me 3 days of visiting banks within a 30-mile radius to find the matching safe deposit box. Each bank refused the key presented. On the 4th day, at a small, unfamiliar regional bank, the key fit, and they requested identification and signature verification. I disclosed that I was investigating a matter concerning my estate, that my wife possessed a box containing pertinent documents for tax purposes. The bank manager, moved by my frailty and estate planning mention, made an impulsive decision, though I'm not proud of the slight deceit involved. The contents found inside the box invalidated any ethical reservations bank statements, transaction records, account information for an offshore account in the Cayman Islands, jointly held by Marcella Vane and Julian Thorne. The name was unfamiliar to me initially, but I traced the money trail left behind by my wife, uncovering that he was her fitness consultant, a personal trainer she hired 2 years ago at around the same time she became involved in yoga classes which I now realized did not exist. Transfers began 18 months prior, small amounts initially, but the transactions grew larger and more frequent over time, totaling nearly a third of my liquid assets while I was battling for my life. However, the worst discovery was a business plan to convert my family's ancestral estate, Vane House, into a luxury hotel. The property had been in my family for 4 generations. My grandfather built it, my father maintained it, and I restored it after inheriting it 30 years ago. The business proposal was intended for potential investors, with the acquisition timeline depending on the resolution of current ownership, a cold phrase masking their intention to wait for me to die. I spent an hour in my car outside the bank, trying to process the enormity of the betrayal. My wife, who had stood by me through chemotherapy sessions and helped manage my medications and vital signs, was not hoping for my recovery. Instead, she was planning my inheritance. A stronger man might have confronted her immediately or demanded explanations, but I am a structural engineer. Instead, I examined the weaknesses of this situation, designed a strategic plan to expose their deceit, and set out to execute it. Over the ensuing months, Julian Thorne faced charges for money laundering, fraud, and various other financial crimes, leading him to spend most of the next 2 decades in federal prison. The loan I designed with his name, backed by property he didn't own, brought forth additional charges of bank fraud and conspiracy. Marcella was implicated as an accomplice due to her signed guarantor documents, making her co-responsible for the loan. Her involvement in the offshore account also linked her to the money laundering allegations. Her nursing license was revoked, her assets were frozen during forfeiture proceedings, and the $280,000 she had taken from me was confiscated as evidence, destined to be returned to my estate. She may serve time in a federal institution, and her legal team is currently in negotiations, but the evidence against her is substantial. The woman who intended to inherit my wealth will instead receive a criminal record. Vane House remains under my control. A boutique hotel will never materialize. My family's legacy endures for another generation at least. I've pondered frequently about feelings of guilt regarding my actions, whether the intricacy of my retaliation was warranted by the magnitude of her treachery. Ultimately, I feel no sentiment akin to guilt. Marcella chose her path when she deemed my demise an acceptable price for her objectives. During chemotherapy treatments, she decided when she stared into my eyes and calculated how much more time she would endure. She made her decision when she signed papers aiming to take away everything our family had constructed. On the other hand, I also chose my own path. A concept in structural engineering called controlled demolition applies here. When a building must be brought down, you don't just attack it haphazardly. Instead, you study its design, identify crucial elements, and strategically place charges to ensure that, at the appropriate moment, the structure collapses as intended. My marriage was such a structure built on deceit, with Marcella being the mastermind behind the deception. I merely studied her plans and designed an elegant collapse of my own. I am 68 years old in remission and possessing health, home, and wealth. What I've learned will stay with me. Every structure has a vulnerability. Anyone thinking themselves invulnerable overlooks crucial factors. Patience, precision, and readiness to seem vulnerable while strategizing are key. Marcella presumed her spouse was a senile man unaware of her infidelity, but she erred. Her husband was an engineer, and engineers always scrutinize the blueprints before acting.